Today on thetruthaboutcars.com, we are out here taking a look at the 2015 Honda Civic Si. Now, why are we taking a look at the 2015 and not the 2016 model, you might be wondering? The real answer, of course, is because we couldn't get the 2016, but also because I wanted to see how the Civic Si compares against the Acura ILX. Now, you may recall I was quite enthusiastic about the brand new 2016 ILX and all the changes that Acura has made to it, so I was wondering exactly how it compares to the Civic Si, on which it is sort of loosely based. Obviously, up front, we don't find LED headlamps in the Civic Si like we do find in the Acura ILX, and the front end isn't quite as luxurious looking. Now, the price tag is not as far off as you might think. This is about $4,000 to $5,000 less expensive than the ILX, but this is actually quite inexpensive for the segment. And if you're comparing the Civic Si sedan to something like a Volkswagen GLI or a Ford Focus ST hatch, then actually those vehicles will be about the same price as that base Acura ILX. I mentioned the Jetta GLI, of course, because this is the sedan version of the Civic Si. And most of the sporty vehicles in this segment are either two-door coupes or hatchbacks. So the Ford Focus ST is five-door hatchback only. Something like a Kia Forte Coupe Turbo or the Veloster Turbo, they're two doors. Of course, that Veloster Turbo is a two-door hatchback, which is also a little bit unique. But bottom line, if you want a traditional sporty sedan in this particular less expensive compact category, this and the GLI and the Acura ILX are really your only options. Volkswagen's GLI, of course, uses a turbocharged engine just like most entries in this segment. The Civic Si, however, uses a naturally aspirated 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine. This engine produces 205 horsepower at a very high 7,000 RPM and 174 pound-feet of torque. This is mated only to a 6-speed manual transmission, and over in the GLI you can opt for an automatic. Now, the power figures are very similar between the ILX and the Si, but the way the power is delivered is actually fairly different because the horsepower and torque over there in the Acura ILX come in at much lower RPMs. That engine's also mated to a brand new Honda Acura 8-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, and this again is 6-speed manual only. We do have a relatively comfortable driver's seat, but we don't have any adjustable lumbar support of any kind. Now, that said, Honda does give you slightly more aggressive lumbar support standard in their seat design, so if that's not something you like, you should keep that in mind. We also have more aggressive bolstering than we find in the regular Honda Civic. Now, we still have a tilt telescopic steering column that is manual and offers a moderate amount of range. Now, I do wish these door openings were a little bit larger because, as you can see, it is relatively easy to bop your head right there, but I still have an adequate amount of headroom even sitting upright in the back. Now, that is especially notable because a lot of vehicles in this particular segment don't give you this much headroom unless you get the hatchback, and this is the sedan. There's even enough room if I sit right here in the middle to actually sit upright again, and just my hair is brushing the ceiling, my head's not actually touching the ceiling. Since we are in a Civic Si, we have Si embroidered there on the seats. You'll notice that we do have about the same level of quality as every other Civic out there. So we have some soft touch portions on the doors, a lot of hard touch plastics going on as you'd expect in this particular category, of course. Now, over on the dashboard, you'll notice that Honda has changed things a few times in this generation of the Civic. When it was first launched, people did complain about the hard touch plastics, and so Honda did release several updates in order to get us to where we are right now, where we have the soft touch injection molded portion of the dash right here with faux stitching, large glove compartment below that, and then slightly different plastics than when the Civic launched. The dashboard still uses this two-tier display layout where we have the tachometer and the multifunction display right up there, and then we have our tachometer below that right in front of the steering wheel. In the center console, we have our touchscreen infotainment system, and our particular model also has the optional navigation system. We have a single-zone manual climate control below that, and then one of our two USB inputs and an HDMI input right there, with a small storage cubby above that. Obviously, the Civic Si has a 6-speed manual transmission. That's one of the hallmarks of this model. And one thing that I really like is that reverse is all the way over to the right and then down, not all the way over to the left and then up. The Civic Si does use a 3-spoke steering wheel, but as you can see, the sport grips are relatively small. So we do find more aggressive steering wheel designs on something like a Volkswagen GTI. We do have a little Si logo there at the bottom. Out on the road, the Civic Si reminds me an awful lot of the Subaru BRZ or Scion FRS. Obviously not because this car has a rear-wheel drive driving dynamic, because it doesn't. This is a front-wheel drive compact sedan, but because of the way that it feels pure, it feels light, it feels like you're very much in command of the vehicle. Now, those vehicles have that same sort of feeling in a rear-wheel drive form, and this has those same sort of feelings in a front-wheel drive form. Compared to other vehicles out there, like a Mercedes-Benz CLA 250 or an Audi A3, that are front-wheel drive that obviously handle incredibly well, they feel a lot heavier, a lot more isolated than the Civic Si. And the Si has more of a raw feel to it. You can actually get this car to start squealing its tires at lower speeds. The manual transmission actually is very much a team player out here on the road, and this engine revs all the way up to 7,000 RPM, where we do get all the horsepower out of it. That makes it very different than turbocharged engines out there, and again, very much like that FRS or the BRZ. The steering in this vehicle is also very, very accurate, and it makes it an awful lot of fun to drive out here on these winding mountain roads. Now, what really surprised me about the Civic Si is that this suspension is not harsh like we find in the Ford Focus ST. It means it's an awful lot easier to drive as your daily driver. The Focus is just a little bit too harsh for my tastes, a little bit too punishing for daily use. Also, unlike the Ford Focus ST, this is a naturally aspirated engine. So again, in order to get all the power out of it, we do have to rev it up over 7,000 RPM. And that's not going on in any of the turbocharged options out there. The Jetta, the Kia Forte Coupe, the Hyundai, the Ford, etc. All of those are turbocharged vehicles, and they just don't have the same kind of driving dynamic. Now, on the downside, you do have a bit of a choice to make between acceleration and feel, because although the feel is excellent in this and I rate it above those other vehicles, the acceleration times are actually slower. And I ran from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds, which means this is a little bit slower than Acura's ILX. Similarly, the braking in this vehicle is a little bit longer than the competition. I ran from 60 to 0 in 128 feet, which is a little bit longer. Keep in mind that this particular Civic Si does not have the summer tire package, and that would reduce your braking distance. Honda loves very simple pricing ladders. This starts at $23,090. As we have equipped here, it comes in at $24,590, and this is essentially fully loaded. There are really only two options. You can either get it with summer tires, or you can get it with the navigation, which is what our model has. That makes this a little bit less expensive than Ford's Focus ST, because it starts at $24,475. Of course, the Focus ST does give you more power. It has that 252 horsepower turbocharged engine. Volkswagen's GLI has right about the same kind of power as this. Of course, its engine is turbocharged as well, so it's going to deliver its power in slightly different of a fashion than we have in this Honda. But that GLI will cost you significantly more. It starts at $26,090 and ends up just under $30,000. So right in that same window that the Acura ILX plays in. Science TC is the bargain entry in this segment. Of course, it also has the lowest power figure at $179, but it's $20,180, and of course, a two-door model only. Kia's Forte Coupe is a little bit less expensive at $20,590 for their 201 horsepower turbocharged engine, and that's also closely related to the Hyundai Veloster Turbo, which is also 201 horsepower at $22,600. Now, the Veloster is slightly more of a performance vehicle. It is a two-door hatchback, however, and the Kia is a two-door coupe, both quite different than the four-door sedan we're taking a look at here. Now, although they do have lower starting prices, to add the same kind of equipment that we get in this model, they're going to be about the same price. Kia's Forte Coupe is also not quite a dedicated performance vehicle, so its suspension is a little bit softer. It's not quite as accurate as the steering in this particular model. The transmission doesn't feel quite as engaging either. Speaking of that Acura ILX, however, it starts at $27,900, which is right in the middle of that Volkswagen GLI pricing scheme, and also right in the middle of the Ford Focus ST. Even if you add all the options to that Acura ILX, it only ends up at $34,890, which is only a little bit higher than that Volkswagen GLI will go, and you will get features that you don't find in any of the other entries in this segment, like a dual-screen infotainment system. We also have two mode dampers, LED headlamps, power heated leather seats on the inside, blind spot monitoring, cross-traffic detection, and a variety of other luxury and safety features that you just don't find in any other vehicle in this particular segment. Now, in addition to all of that, it's also a luxury branded vehicle, so it has a luxury warranty, and that means it's going to have an extra year and at least 12,000 miles bumper to bumper and powertrain versus most of the entries in this segment. Now, all told, the Acura is going to be about $4,000 to $6,000 more expensive than what we see here, but it will also have about $6,000 to $7,000 more standard equipment than we get in the Civic Si. Now personally for me, I would definitely get the ILX over the Civic Si. It actually is one of my favorite vehicles in this segment. Now I actually like the way the ILX handles a little bit better than the Civic Si. Depending on the version that you get, it will hold the road better than the Civic Si because it only weighs 90 pounds more. Now in addition, that ILX has a 2-mode damper system which gives you both a softer ride and retains most of the handling abilities that we get in the Civic Si. In addition to all of that, the ILX will also give you slightly better fuel economy. So my advice, if you're taking a look at the Honda Civic Si, is bump yourself up to the base Acura ILX at least, or wait for the 2016 Civic Si to come down because we do expect some major changes there. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next week.